Good morning and welcome to Big Bets on Campus Live, presented by BetMGM. This is the Week 6 college football betting preview. It's 10:30 a.m. Eastern. I'm your host, Stuckey, and joining me, as always, my Big Bets on Campus podcast co-host, Collin Wilson, and of course, our own college football insider, Mr. Brett McMurphy. We have a lot to get to today. We'll go through 4 marquee games. We'll give our best bets here in just a few minutes. We'll also close up with one final best bet, and Colin and I will go through a 5-team round robin underdog moneyline parlay. Before we continue, I do want to remind everyone to make sure that you download the award-winning Action Network app. You can find all of our picks in addition to an abundance of actionable data and information for today's slate and beyond. And also, our sponsor, BetMGM, has a great offer for new users. Use the code ACTION when you sign up. You can get up to $1,000 risk-free bet. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, before we get to our best bets and the marquee games, it's crazy. The Red River Shootout Rivalry, whatever it's called nowadays, is not going to be in the marquee games. It's the first time since 1998 that these two teams will meet unranked. Lots of crazy news out there. Dillon Gabriel is apparently warming up. I don't know if he's going to play or not. Colin, I see that you just bet Oklahoma. I wish you luck with that defense.
Yeah, defense is terrible. Been fading it for weeks and making a lot of money on it, but there's at some point where the market goes too far. And I know Dillon Gabriel is warming up, and OU is, very conscious of the fact that, playing a kid with a concussion is not, they're going to be frowned upon. So I don't know if he's going to play. If not, we can get out of the bet. I still expect Oklahoma to have some explosive plays. It's going to allow you to get out of this live. Red River's a live betting bonanza. I don't expect this to be any different.
Brett, I know you're a college football historian. Are you sad that we're not going to talk about this game?
Yeah, I'm sad, very sad. But, the big game in the Big 12 is in Lawrence this week. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark was scheduled to go to OU, Texas, and instead he's in Lawrence, Kansas with everybody else.
Yeah, game day is there. We'll talk about that game shortly. I think it was 4 Big 12 games this week, and the only one that's putting 2 unranked teams together is Oklahoma and Texas. All right, let's move on to our best bets here. Let's first bring up the leaderboard. Colin on top, but if we were stocks, Brett would be shooting through the roof. Brett is on fire the past 2 weeks. I hope and assume that you're going to bring the real winners again this week.
I may pass on every game, Stuckey. I'm not sure yet. I'm still thinking about it.
All right, fair enough. Let's move on to our best bets. I'll kick things off here. I'm going to go with Stanford. I think the line's at 5 now. I'd like it. We're 4.5, 5.5. Oregon, the line came down because Oregon State's backup quarterback is going to play. Stanford hasn't covered 11 straight games. 11 straight. And yes, I'm going to back them here. I think this is the spot. I think they've reached the bottom of their market. It's a great spot to fade Oregon State as well. Quarterback issues, missing their tight end. They're coming off back-to-back deflating losses. And, Stanford just played 3 top 20 teams. And the problem was their offensive line. They just could not protect Tanner McKee. Well, they get some guys back. They had a kid come in and make his collegiate debut at right tackle who was awesome. And Oregon State doesn't generate pressure. So I think this is the right matchup in the right spot to get Stanford. I think they pull off this upset outright. Colin, where are you going?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Navy +6 taking on Tulsa. And there is a serious problem in this series. Navy is 6-1 in the last 7. You say, well, Colin, you're not a trends guy, and I'm not. But Philip Montgomery, head coach of Tulsa, came out to Tulsa World this week and said the reason that we struggle in this series every single year is because we cannot build a scout team to replicate what Navy does. It's just impossible for us to do in a 7-day period because we don't have a fullback. We don't have a player on this entire roster that can emulate a fullback or what the quarterback can do from an option perspective. That's because Navy is, all triple option. There is no passing in there like Stuckey. So Tulsa is awful against the run and outside the top 90 in success rate, line yard, stuff rate. So Navy's rush defense is going to have just a day here where Tulsa can't prepare for it. And Navy's defense is actually really good this year. Second in defensive finishing drives. Opponents are only scoring 2.2 points in scoring attempts against the Navy defense. So give me Navy +6, probably outright, considering even Philip Montgomery says we don't even know how to prepare for this team.
Yeah, I'd be a bit worried about the Navy pass defense, but I like the number here. So I went with Stanford. Colin went with Navy. How ugly we're going to keep it for our best bets? Brett, where are you going?
Yeah, Colin says he doesn't like trends, so I'm going to give you a play based historically on trends. I'm looking at Utah State plus 10.5 against Air Force. 2 weeks ago, the Aggies lost starting quarterback Logan Bonner to a season-ending injury. Last week against BYU, Cooper Luga sparked the offense. They looked okay. Either he's going to start or Levi Williams, but this isn't so much a play on Utah State. It is a play against Air Force. The Falcons are coming off a win against Navy, huge for the Commander-in-Chief trophy. Well, guess what? The last 12 years after playing Navy, the Falcons 1-11 against the spread. I'll take Utah State plus 10.5.
Yeah, I never hate fading a Service Academy laying double digits, limited possessions. I'm just having flashbacks to the first game of the year when UConn was just running wild against Utah State. But Utah State did finally look a bit better last week. All right, that'll wrap up our best bets. A collection of, is all I'll say, Utah State, Stanford, and Navy. All right, let's move on to our marquee games of the day. We'll kick things off in SEC country in Death Valley at noon Eastern. Tennessee travels to LSU. LSU's 3-point home dog here, over under, what's it, 65. I talked about this on the podcast. I cannot figure out LSU just yet, and I don't know who I trust less, the Tennessee secondary or the LSU passing attack. I expect LSU to be aggressive here passing, but I don't know if it's going to work. So, yeah, this is a wait and see for me. Probably looking to get Tennessee live, but this is a pregame pass. Colin, I know that you're passionate about the Bayou Bengals today.
Yeah, I do like LSU plus 3. I was excited that Garrett Dellinger was coming back to the offensive line, and now Will Campbell, the left tackle, is out for dehydration in the hospital per his Instagram last night. So, but I still like LSU plus 3 here. Brian Kelly publicly called out his quarterback to do more, and the LSU offense has just been conservative. The wide receivers have had too many drops, and you think, why did Brian Kelly call out Jaden Daniels? Like, who does that publicly, right? It wasn't an amateur move. It was a calculated move because Tennessee is beyond terrible in their coverage grading. This will be the best passing day that LSU has the entire season. And Tennessee on the offensive side is determined to establish the run. For as much as we love Hendon Hooker going downfield in the up-tempo, this is all about them staying ahead of the chains and staying in standard downs. That's where the LSU defense absolutely destroys teams, is in standard downs. They have shut down everybody in the second half, and they're top 25 in defensive line yards. So I just don't think Tennessee's going to be able to get any kind of running attack going whatsoever. Beer went on sale at 9 a.m. in Tiger Stadium. Crowd's going to be hot. I'm going to take LSU plus 3.
Well, if the LSU offense is dealing with dehydration, you better hope the defense is not against that Tennessee tempo. Brett, where are you going?
I'm actually going under 65. Some of the things Colin mentioned, LSU's defense against Tennessee. And look, we know how fast Tennessee wants to play. They've got some injury issues at wide receiver. And I think actually LSU will be able to slow down Tennessee. But let's say they can't. Let's say Tennessee jumps out and is run away with this thing. Well, guess what? They're going to start slowing it down in the second half. Why would they do that? Because next week they have Alabama. I think this is a very competitive game, back and forth, but 65 is a lot of points to get there. I will take under 65 for LSU, Tennessee.
Tennessee unders are never fun, so I wish you luck. Let's move on to our next marquee game of the day, and it's where College Game Day is. TCU at Kansas, a top 20 matchup of undefeated Big 12 teams. This spread is TCU's taking money. The over's taking money. I think it's TCU around a touchdown favorite, over under around 69. It just feels like we're previewing, what am I doing? A college basketball show. I think college basketball starts in 30 days, so maybe it's fitting for TCU at Kansas. I'm done giving my money away on fading Kansas, and I missed the line on TCU. Wish I got it early, but at the current prices, looks about right to me. Colin, where are you going?
Yeah, if you guys are out there like college basketball season, get your TCU futures in, all 5 starters back. There's a piece up on Action Network for everybody. But I told everybody on the podcast that TCU is going to roll here. I do like them. I power rated up to 10, but I would play it at a lot less at 7.5 or 8. So for this game, I'm going to go under 69. There's a full write-up that talks everything about TCU's possessions, scored on 29 of 49 of them. How is Kansas going to beat that offense that does this with explosive, fast? This has been nothing but a highlight reel in TCU games. And the only way to do this is for the Jayhawks to completely slow down the pace. People forget that TCU and Kansas are actually really slow teams. They go about 29 seconds per play. And the best way to keep that TCU offense off the field is to have slow, methodical drives by Kansas. I expect this game to have a similar pace to Kansas-Iowa State last week when the Jayhawks had to look at a 3-3-5 stack defense. Just look for them to get enough tackles in because Jayhawks are second in tackling in the nation. That should prevent some of the explosives. I don't expect TCU to be kept down the entire game, but the fact that Kansas is disciplined in their defense should limit some explosives and get this under home.
Brett, some of the heat has been removed from you since Kansas is now ranked. I know you've ranked them yourself the past 2 weeks. Are you riding with Rock Chalk here?
No, I'm not stuck. I'm going with TCU, and I am a little disappointed. You've got another pass. I guess we're gonna have to rename the show Big Passes on Campus. But look, Tuesday on the new BCS podcast, it's a no passing zone. Stuckey and Collin both gave out their early plays. They both won last night with Colorado State and San Jose State. We're now 8-1 on those plays. So listen in every Tuesday if you're not. My early play was on TCU. I got him early at 4.5. I still like him at 7. Kansas is having an unbelievable season. Lance Leipold, unbelievable job. Probably too good for the Jayhawks because that means he'll be somewhere else next year. I just think with the hoopla with College game day in town, that's a major distraction. And bottom line is TCU's the better team. Give me Mad Max Duggan and the Horned Frogs. I like TCU.
Oh, wow. That was some spiel. Big touts on campus featuring Brett McMurphy. All right, let's take a break in the action and move on to halftime. And it's time for our round robin underdog moneyline parlay. Do a 5-teamer every week. Collin always starts us off with an anchor. Small favorite. Where are you going here?
Yeah, let's take Notre Dame down in Las Vegas going up against BYU. And it's just a huge mismatch in the trench. BYU outside the top 100 and stuff rate on both sides of the ball. Notre Dame's not that great at producing highlights on offense, but it doesn't matter. They're going to dominate the trench and win this game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with South Carolina against Kentucky. I'll talk about this game later, so hold on for that analysis.
Yeah, well, let's add Purdue to this as an underdog going up against Maryland. Maryland's defense has no havoc whatsoever, one of the worst in the nation, no pass rush, no pass breakups, and that means the Boilermakers pass offense is going to roll today. So take the Boilermakers.
Yeah, this line's moved a little bit, but I'm going to go with UVA with Cunningham likely out for Louisville. Their backup is no good. Cunningham is basically that entire team. I think Louisville is going like this. Close us out.
Yeah, let's close this out with Navy. Gave it as a best bet. If Philip Montgomery can't build a scout team that looks like Navy, then how is he going to be able to tackle and defend or do anything with this Navy offense? So go with the middies here.
All right, there it is for our round robin underdog moneyline parlay. Let's move on to the second half to cover our final 2 marquee games of the day. Let's go to the Pac-12. This is a big one. This has a lot of implications in the Pac-12, potential college football playoff. We're talking Utah at UCLA. UCLA 3.5 point underdog. I think over under sitting around 64.5. Give me UCLA. Give me DTR. He's just a different player this year. All of the talk in the offseason was about how he's taking everything much more serious. His diet, his sleep habits, film, and he has looked tremendous so far. And I think this Utah team might have slipped a little bit, and not a lot of people might be aware. I mean, they lost their top pass catcher, but I'm more concerned about the defense. We saw them get shredded by Florida and a dual threat quarterback in the opener. Last week against Oregon State, yes, the final score looks good. The final margin looks good, but they got a bunch of interceptions. The yards per play was about even. And Oregon State had their backup quarterback in there for a large part of that game. I think the run defense is vulnerable. And I just think this UCLA team is undervalued still in the market. UCLA, I think, is in for a scare. Collin, I know that you want them maybe to lose for a bet next weekend, but maybe not for Pac-12 futures. I don't know, but I love UCLA here. Where are you going?
Well, yeah, the Pac-12 futures are on Utah, so I can take a loss. I didn't bet the team total win over, but I think UCLA is going to win this game. They're going to beat Utah today, and it's because of Chip Kelly and DTR's running attack on the ground. Second nationally in stuff rate, fifth in line yards. They are plowing holes and moving through them, and opponents are not stopping that. And Utah has struggled all season to defend the rush. They're now 95th defensively in line yards, meaning that they're not going to be able to meet at the point of attack and stop DTR and Zach Charbonnet and that entire offense. And Cam Rising is going to be limited on offenses at quarterback for Utah. UCLA has one of the highest grades in coverage per PFF. So give me all the Sissy Blue t-shirts. And we're going to do some more UCLA loving today before we back Utah big time against USC next week.
Sissy Blue shirts. This is shocking. Collin not backing Utah. I mean, he is just he's no longer rooting for Arkansas after what Petrino did. Now he's off the Utah bandwagon after what Billy Napier did in the opener. I mean, I don't know what's going on. Are you sticking true to your preseason Utah allegiance?
That's right, Stuck. I mean, look, Collin, you rolled off some incredible analytics and everything. Why does UCLA have those numbers? Because to quote Stuckey, they played a bunch of corpses. They haven't played anybody. Even after playing Washington last week, UCLA has still played one of the easiest schedules in the country. Well, that changes today when the Utes roll into Pasadena. Before the season, like Stuck mentioned, Utah was my pick to win the Pac-12. No reason to change right now. You look at recent history, the last 4 meetings between the teams, Utah has won by 31, 31, 46, and 20. They don't need to roll it up that much. All they have to do is win by 4. That'll be no problem. Like Kansas, UCLA's unbeaten season ends today. Give me Utah -3.5. Sorry, guys. We're going head-to-head on this one.
Played a bunch of corpses. The slander on South Alabama. South Alabama might win the belt. All right. Good stuff there. I can't wait for that game, and I'm sure there will be some good banter on Twitter between the three of us. All right, let's move on to the final marquee game of the day. We're going to go back to the SEC in prime time. Texas A&M at Alabama. Alabama 24-point favorite here. The total is coming down. Bryce Young ruled out. Max Johnson ruled out. So we have, a lot of quarterback uncertainty all week. It was an interesting market to watch. Apparently, doesn't matter who the Alabama quarterback is because the line really hasn't moved that much, but the total has. I'll kick things off here. I'm going with Texas A&M team total under. Talked about this on the podcast all week. This is the Saban revenge game. Look, he's had 15 of these games where he's lost to an opponent the previous season. And since he's been at Alabama over the past, about 15 years, he's got 14-1 straight up. He's gone 11-4 against the spread. But if you look at the times where he was favored by more than 10 points, he's gone 6-0 against the spread. But more importantly, in these spots, he never lets off the pedal. He is going to ensure that Texas A&M, especially now when Jimbo Fisher poured gasoline onto this matchup with his comments in the preseason. If you look back at those 6 teams, all SEC teams that beat him the previous season, if you look in the second half of those games, the margin was 127 for Alabama to 33. Those 6 opponents, SEC opponents, scored 7 total points in the fourth quarter. So I think, look, Alabama's offense might not look as crisp without the passing of Bryce Young. Maybe that helps us a little bit more. But regardless of the margin, Saban doesn't want Texas A&M to score. And even if he didn't, I don't know if Texas A&M could score on their own. With Haynes King out there, who had 2 picks against Sam Houston. He threw for 97 yards against App State. Last week, I think he was 5 of 14 for 50 yards and a pick. Like this offense, and they also lost their top receiver. So, yeah, this is Alabama squeezing the life out of Texas A&M in a Saban revenge spot all the way until the end. Collin, where are you going?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Alabama in the first quarter, -7. And if there's one thing you can depend on, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. Alabama is absolutely blowing opponents out of the water in the first and third quarter. They are the most prepared on both sides of the ball coming out against their opponent. And then at halftime, they're making the best adjustments in the nation, absolutely shutting down opposing offenses. And the offense themselves for the Crimson Tide has scored a ton of points. So going into this game, Alabama has outscored opponents 83-6 6 in the first quarter this season. The Crimson Tide have the best scouts in the world because, they've been able to just expose everything the offenses want to do. And, when you look at what Alabama wants to do on offense today with Jalen Milrose, it's going to be explosive zone reads on the ground. Texas A&M has struggled against the rush all season long. It's a pretty easy decision to let Bryce Young sit, keep his arm healthy for next week against Tennessee's bad secondary, and let Jalen Milrose just absolutely go ham here today against the Texas A&M defense that can't defend the run. So give me Bama in the first quarter -7.
You're getting more Tennessee jabs in the Texas A&M-Alabama analysis. Rocky Top Nation 959 Bad Beat podcast voicemail. Let Collin hear it today after Tennessee wins. Brett, where are you? You got an Alabama shirt you're going to pull out here?
No.
Are you back at Saban here?
No Alabama shirt. And, look, this is going to be blowouts. And speaking of blowouts, I don't know if you guys knew this. 106 years ago yesterday, Georgia Tech beat Cumberland 222-0. I was actually a college freshman then. I gave out my first ever lock of the year on Georgia Tech -221.5. That one cast easily. For this one, Stuck, you guys laid it out, but I'm going to go a different route. Saban and revenge games 11-4. I've got a better number than that. How about Saban 8-2 the last 10 going over the total in these revenge games? You're right, Stuck. Saban will not take his foot off the pedal. I mean, heck, Alabama may get there themselves. I'm worried about a backdoor with, I think the number's down to 24. It was as high as 27 earlier in the week. I'd be concerned you could get backdoored there, but I think Saban keeps his foot on the pedal. They'll score early and often, and hopefully Texas A&M can add one score, maybe two, to help me get over the total. But I'm going over 48.5 Alabama and Texas A&M.
Well, if they're going to add 2 scores, make sure it's a field goal and a touchdown. So the team
total, the extra point.
The team total under. But I think that to shop around for that, there could be 11. Let's get 10. Let's get you 45. But one thing with Alabama's quarterback being out is the weakest part of this Texas A&M defense has been the undervalue. I mean, their run defense has been bad. You assume Alabama's going to go much more run heavy here, and that could work just as well. So I'll be curious to see how this one plays out. By the way, that 222-0 Cumberland game, that was John Heisman, right? Wasn't he the coach?
Yes, he was.
Okay. I want to read a book about the game. Apparently it's like there was amateurs that were playing or pros they grabbed, and then it had to do with a baseball game. I don't know. Look it up. It's a fascinating 222-0. Like, how can that be possible? I'm sure Saban wants to win 222-0 today if he could. All right. Good stuff on that one. We do have one final order of business, and that is one final best bet. I'll kick things off here. I mentioned this earlier. I'm going to go with South Carolina. Even at the current number, it's rumored that Will Levis will be out for Kentucky. Going to go to a freshman here. I love this spot all week. Had it circled. I think a lot of the South Carolina defensive metrics are artificially bad. They played some SEC competition, but had a number of starters out. At one point, they had up to 8 starters that weren't on the field. Past 2 weeks, pretty much buys. They played Charlotte. Thank God Charlotte's on a bye, so I can't be telling you to bet them right here. And then they played South Carolina State on a Thursday. They have extra rest here, but basically they've had a couple weeks to prepare for this game. It's a huge game. And Kentucky they just have issues on offense because of that offensive line. So I think a much healthier, more well-rested South Carolina team has value. I think Kentucky is on major upset alert after losing that Ole Miss game in heartbreaking fashion. Big game on deck. I think South Carolina is very, very live here. Collin, where are you going?
I'm going to go down and get some action here. Let's get prepared. We got about 3-4 weeks before we get midweek action, so we need to know our teams. I'm going to go with Miami of Ohio getting points, taking on Kent State today. And I power rate Miami as a favorite on our Action Network power ratings on the site, so I don't really understand what this number is. I do understand that there's been a lot of injuries for Miami of Ohio, and maybe the market just hasn't caught up yet. But Miami has won 8 of their last 9 at home, and Kent has lost 5 straight on the road. So from a trend perspective, it looks like Miami has huge home field advantage here. But I think it's a game where they should be a favorite. Kent has a heavy rush offense. 63% of the time they run the ball. The Redhawks defense is top 10 nationally in success rate versus the run. And the new quarterback for Miami of Ohio since Gabbert went out is Avion Smith, a dual threat quarterback, absolutely tore into Buffalo last week, 142 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. He is going to take the MAC by storm. Even though the team's 0-1, they're going to make a big comeback and be in the MAC championship game. It starts against Kent State today.
At 10:40, you told us you weren't a trends guy. Now you're playing Miami because of the trends.
No, it's the new quarterback. Avion Smith's awesome.
Brett, where you going?
Calling his team trends all of a sudden. I'm going Purdue, Maryland under 61.5. I don't know if you guys watched Rutgers, Nebraska last night. If so, hopefully your eyes have stopped bleeding. Mine is still a little misty there. Classic Big Ten football, right? The last 2 weeks, the Big Ten is done what the Big Ten always does. Throw out Ohio State games, Big Ten conference games the last 2 weeks, 8-2 to the under. Let's look at the biggest Big Ten total today. That's Purdue, Maryland. I know Collin likes Purdue. That's fine, but they're going to keep it under 61.5, Purdue and Maryland.
Brett, today you gave out, let's see, Utah State, a Tennessee under, a Maryland under, a Texas A&M over. You are really going to be sweating today.
10-2 the last 2 weeks, if that matters to anybody out there.
You can't argue with the results. All right, that will do it for us. Thank you for tuning in. As always, make sure you check out the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. Wherever you listen to podcasts, we have 3 episodes a week, plus the new BCS show, which comes out on Tuesdays, where myself, Brett, and Collin talk a little college football casually. And then, we'll throw out some betting recaps and look aheads for the week ahead. And as Brett said, we are 8-1 on those early look ahead. So make sure you tune in to that on Tuesday. Also, reminder for new users signing up on BetMGM, use the code ACTION and you can get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. Terms and conditions do apply. And as always, make sure that you have the award-winning Action Network app. Good luck on all of your wagers today, and we'll see you same time next Saturday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Cheers.